Hey folks, and welcome back. Today I am going over a few of my favorite books that I think everyone who is homesteading, gardening, or doing anything in that sort of space should read, no matter where you live. This video is going to be a response to a collaboration invitation by Jessica Sowards from Roots and Refuge. And I've got a different take on mine. So I read a lot. I have a lot of books. And I've wanted to do a favorite book video for a while in regards to homesteading and gardening. The problem is I have a lot of the same books that everyone else does. And although these books that I have are great books and I would recommend all of them to anybody, I wanted to focus more on what I would want to see in a YouTube video and what kind of books I would want to read specifically to the type of channel that I run. One of the issues that I ran into when starting my gardening and homesteading journey is that there wasn't a lot of information out there about how to do it in a dry, arid, hot environment. Now with this sudden influx of homesteading over the last few years, there is a ton of information to be found on the internet, books, magazines, blogs, podcasts, whatever resource you name it. It just skyrocketed in the last few years. But when I was looking back, when I first started years ago, I couldn't find a whole lot of resources for desert dwellers, which is part of the reason that I started this YouTube channel. And of course, there are channels and books and blogs and everything out there for desert dwellers. But I still think that the Southwest desert of USA is severely underrepresented. So all of the books that I'm going to recommend today are going to be geared towards living in dry and arid climates. They're all written by students who have lived most, if not all of their entire lives in a dry, arid climate, particularly most of them in the Southwest. Although this does not mean that the information in these books today is not applicable to y'all living in the green Midwest or the humid South or the chilly Northwest. They will absolutely give you practical tools and knowledge to help you wherever you are homesteading or gardening. And so I've got only three technical books here that I'm going to go over with you guys, and then 2 honorable mentions that are less textbooky, less informational, and more like stories. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first book that I think is probably my favorite out of this selection that I've picked today is going to be Growing Food in a Hotter, Drier Land by Gary Paul Navin. And you will see this author's name on a few of these books. I'm a big fan. So Gary Paul Navin is an agricultural ecologist and an ethnobotanist, and he focuses primarily on the arid Southwest. He has studied and worked with many indigenous peoples on the US and Mexican border to learn about agricultural practices and natural resources in the desert environment of North America. He is also the co-founder of Native Seeds, or you may know it as Native Seeds Search, which is a nonprofit company based in Arizona that preserves native Southwest plants and knowledge of their uses. This is a great seed company. I purchase from them at least once a year, and they have an amazing selection of desert adapted plant varieties that are native to the Arizona, New Mexico, just basic Southwest area. And some of their varieties are very, very cool. Many of his books are not only informative, but just eloquently written to tell a story and bring awareness to the significance of local food and cultural preservation in arid locations. So I have several books by him, this one, and then the other 2 that are my honorable mentions, which I will talk about later. Love him, love the books. In every one of these books that I have here, he gives tales and stories of meeting with indigenous communities, either in Arizona or in Mexico, and then showing how these indigenous communities use, grow, preserve food long-term. And he makes it a point to want to preserve the heritage of these methods that still work today, such as water harvesting and using native seeds and the practical earth skills that have been passed down for generations in these indigenous communities. The way that he writes is so great because he offers, there's a ton of information in here. There's pictures, there's graphs and tables, but the way that he writes is in such a way it doesn't make it feel like a boring, monotonous textbook because of his stories and real life scenarios he has in here as well. I mean, just tons of information. It's great. I know that was probably blurry, but this is an awesome book. I highly recommend this one. So this book was primarily on growing food, gardening. There's some other permaculture principles in here, such as water harvesting, building resistance against drought, high climate events like massive winds or flooding, protecting animals. That's just a basic gardening, homesteading informational book. The next two are getting more into herbal medicine, which I also think is very important. And I have two great books on herbal medicine, primarily based for the Southwest or arid environments where these plants grow. This second book is The Ecology of Herbal Medicine, which is from an author who is also based in the Southwest, actually just a couple hours from me in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Dara Saville is the founder of Albuquerque Herbalism, which is a bioregional herbal studies program based out of Albuquerque, and it's focused on native plant medicine, education, preservation, and outreach. In her words, she wrote this book to provide information, tools, and inspiration for knowledgeable, mindful, intuitive, and passionate engagement with the land and plants through herbal practice and general lifestyle. And the entire premise is based upon the concept of ecological herbalism, which is an approach to working with plants based on their interactions with other elements of the natural environment, i.e. permaculture. She has dedicated her life to studying the different flora and fauna of Southwest ecosystems and how they relate to not only themselves, each other, but humans and climatic pressures. And she really conveys to the reader the importance of preserving native plants and their habitats. She has a materia medica of 39 common wild plants of the Southwest and their medicinal uses, as well as their relationship within their specific ecosystem. She talks about the succession of plants within the desert that has occurred over the millennia. And there was actually a whole section in here which I found fascinating about the Chihuahuan Desert, which is the one I live in, and how its desertification took place, how it's getting worse every year, and the different succession of plants that happened over time to make it what it is. Now, the book itself is focused specifically on native landscapes within the desert Southwest of the USA, but it is absolutely relevant to anyone living in an arid climate. The materia medica has several plants in here that I know grow all over the US, and I'm sure all over the world. Guys, I'm sorry, my viewers across the pond, I don't know where all of y'all are from, and I don't know what grows in your area, but there are a ton of plants in this materia medica that grow at several different places that also happen to grow in the Southwest of USA. But I think her knowledge of healing plants and their relationships to humans and the nature around them is absolutely vital for any homesteader or gardener who wants to better themselves and their relationship with the earth. And my last textbook informational recommendation is going to be called Southwest Foraging by John Slattery. John Slattery is a bioregional herbalist, forager, and educator. He founded the Desert Turquoise Botanicals, which is an herbal medicine company in Tucson, Arizona, that focuses on using local plants of the American Southwest and northern Mexico, as well as educating and preserving traditions of indigenous herbal practices. This book is pretty no nonsense. I absolutely love it. It's basically just an entire book based on lists of plants. But what is so fascinating about this foraging book specifically is that he goes over the types of systems, ecological systems and habitats that are found in the Southwest USA. You've got deserts, cactus forests, oak woodlands, hardwood forests, swamps, and bogs. I didn't know the Southwest had swamps. And so he's got all these different habitats throughout the Southwest, and then he will list where to find the specific plant you're looking for in the Southwest because of the habitat that it lives in. And like any good foraging book, he tells you how to identify them, where and when to gather, how to gather them, how to use, and how to preserve the plant so that you can ensure there are future harvests. So you're not taking everything from the earth that you don't need. There are a few desert foraging books that I found. This one has been the most extensive, the most reviewed, and the highest rated. I mean, obviously this author does live, work, and practice in the Southwest. He is from here and has dedicated his life to educating about foraging native medicinal plants from the Southwest. So I absolutely recommend this book if you are going to go foraging in the Southwest or you live here and you want to know what native medicinal plants live around you, what you can eat, what you can't. I think this is great. It's an all-inclusive Southwest foraging book. It's the best one that I found. So now for my 2 runner-ups. These are more novel-like. They're nonfiction, but they're not textbooks. They're not super informational. They're both from Gary Paul Nabhan. The first one is called Coming Home to Eat. If any of you all are familiar with the book Animal Vegetable Miracle, this is a very similar type of story, but based mostly on Southwest foods for the most part. This book is basically a memoir of Mr. Nabhan's year-long mission to eat only foods grown, fished, or gathered, foraged within 200 miles of his home. And it's a really good story. Like I said, he's a great storyteller. The second one is Mesquite, also by him. I have referenced this book in another video, the video I did on the mesquite tree. I will link it down below. This is where I got a lot of information about mesquite. This is where I learned, I mean, besides Google and local resources here, this is where I gleaned most of my information about the mesquite tree. It's an amazing plant. This has a lot of information in it, based in a story format and like little single story chapters. Great book. I highly recommend both of these if you're just looking for something to read, not necessarily something to study, not to sit down with a pen and piece of paper and take notes because you're reading a textbook. These are just great bedside reads that you will still learn a ton of information from. So that is it, guys. My 5 books. I've got 3 large informational textbook type books and 2 more casual reading type books, all primarily based on the Southwest. If you're a desert homesteader or you're trying to homestead or garden in a dry environment or a very, very hot environment, I am both. I highly recommend all 3 of these. You can find them on Amazon. I believe I bought all 3 of these on Amazon. I don't have an affiliate link that I can send you guys. I also do recommend looking on thriftbooks.com. Yeah, I think it's Thrift Books. I believe I got one of these on Thrift Books because the Ecology of Herbal Medicine and Growing Food in a Hotter, Drier Climate, I think these were pretty pricey. So you might be able to find a cheaper one used if you're interested in reading them. But that is it. If you guys are interested in other books I have several books on herbal medicine, on gardening, raising animals, etc., etc. Please let me know in the comments below. I don't mind doing another one of these videos. I just don't really want to do a video on a book that everyone else has also done a video on. I want to give you guys something new and exciting and interesting to read that you haven't heard of 20 million times. So thank you guys for joining me today on this video, and I will catch you on the next one.